It has been over 2 years since I started ranking the seasons and episodes of BoJack Horseman, and just like with Archer, I never gave an explanation for my ranking of these episodes and seasons. Thus re-ranking these allows me to address this as well as determine whether my ranking has changed since then. The first season of BoJack Horseman is widely considered by fans as the weakest season of the show. Thus this season might be less fun to rewatch compared to later seasons. Still, despite that, I can determine what the best and worst episodes are of this season. Now that introduction is out of the way, it's time to start with my least favorite episode of season 1. 2 years ago, Live Fast Diane Nguyen was my least favorite episode of the season, and while that is still the case, I have gone to appreciate this episode for what it is. Still, it feels like this episode doesn't go anywhere. What I dislike the most about this episode is how Diane is treated by her brothers. I get that this is the point, but that doesn't make for an entertaining episode. Overall, there isn't a whole lot happening in this episode, which makes this episode not that rewatchable and is why it ends up at the bottom of my list. The first episode is great at establishing the cast of the show. However, most characters still lack the defining characteristics that make them great in later seasons, such as Todd and Princess Carolyn. The plot itself is okay, but overall this just feels like a Family Guy ripoff, which might be the point, but that doesn't make it good, though it's still an acceptable first episode of a new show. Say Anything is the episode where we get to know Princess Carolyn better. We also get to meet Vanessa Gecko, who can be so annoying at times that you can't help but root for Princess Carolyn. Meanwhile, BoJack goes to her for comfort, but despite all the obstacles, Princess Carolyn remains cool and determined to see it through to the end. This episode made me really appreciate her, but on its own this episode is quite forgettable, especially when compared with episodes higher on this list, which is why it ends up so low on this list. In episode 10, BoJack gets to play as Mr. Peanut Butter and retell the story of how he stole the D for Diane. The joke that never fails to make me laugh is Mr. Peanut Butter's concern with the V-neck t-shirt. Todd and director Quentin Tarantino are also a great combination as they continue to make the movie more ridiculous throughout the episode. Still, despite all these praises, I don't find it as entertaining as episodes higher on this list, which is why it ends up at the number 9 spot. In Prickly-Muffin we get to know Sarah Lynn and learn about the unhealthy relationship BoJack has with her, as BoJack feels guilty for treating her horribly while they were working on horsing around together. This is reiterated again and again, which isn't too bad on your first watch, but on repeated viewing this makes the episode drag out. So while I still find it funny, there are certainly much better episodes this season. In this episode, BoJack tries to sabotage Diane and Mr. Peanut Butter's wedding, and we get introduced to Vincent Adultman, who is hilarious, especially since only BoJack sees that he isn't who he says he is. This is also the episode where Todd and Mr. Peanut Butter start to bond, which is great because they have a great friendship. The story doesn't move the overall plot forward all that much and is just about BoJack's several attempts to sabotage the wedding, but at least this makes for some hilarious moments. In the 4th episode we get to see flashbacks of BoJack with Herb, and the dark acts of BoJack as he sabotages Todd's rock opera. This is also the starting appearance of Margot Martindale, who is always great. While I don't find this episode as funny compared to some episodes higher on this list, it is still a gripping episode that is among the most memorable of the season. In the telescope, BoJack visits Herb Kazaz, and we get to see the past of BoJack some more, while you as the viewer wonder how BoJack is going to stab Herb in the back and why they are no longer friends. This story is so interesting that it makes for a very engaging episode. It's sad that these old best friends fight at the end, as BoJack wants to get closure while Herb understandably doesn't want to give him that. BoJack Hates the Troops is definitely one of the best of the season, with lots of hilarious moments, where BoJack just keeps escalating the situation as he uses this situation as an excuse to avoid talking about his past. In this episode we also get to know Mr. Peanut Butter better, which is great since he is my favorite character of the show. The final episode of the season opens with Secretariat, which is a great scene, and sets things up for the next season with Sebastian St. Clair and BoJack being offered to make the Secretariat movie that he always wanted to make. Aside from that, this episode has lots of hilarious moments, and as a final episode it does a great job in both finishing up the story of the season as well as leaving things open for the future. Episode 6 is easily the funniest episode of the season, as Mr. Peanut Butter gets to shine and face off against BoJack as they are both fighting for Diane. And the B-plot with Todd in prison is also funny. This makes it highly rewatchable and entertaining to watch, but there is just one episode that is even better. In episode 11, BoJack is not happy about his book and decides to rewrite it himself with Todd and Sarah Lynn. And this would mark the penultimate episode, which will be a reoccurring tradition from this point onward. And the ending of this drug trip is so sweet, making it even more heart-wrenching when BoJack wakes up and has to deal with the life that he chose. This is without a doubt the most disturbing and memorable episode of the season, and shows the strength of the show, and because of that it deserves the number 1 spot. So that was my ranking of the episodes of the first season of BoJack Horseman. Let me know if you agree with my ranking, and if not, how would you rank these episodes? Thank you for watching, bye bye.